Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's Talk Consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good today. Thanks for asking. And I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we'll be celebrating World Kindness Day with insights from the spiritual science of Kriya Yoga. C.S. Lewis once said, "Humanity is designed for peace, love, happiness, and goodness, but a big part of this design is God." Listen as we discuss the role of spirit in the process leading to world peace. Cruelty is a sign of weakness. We can expect kindness only from the strong. We'll be talking about the magic of awakening in the likeness of the divine. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and become the change you want to see, kindness in the world. So, Swami, I first thought I would do is describe what World Kindness Day is for our listeners. So it's a day to celebrate and promote kindness in all of its forms. World Kindness Day falls on the same day and unites people in kindness globally. World Kindness Day is an international observance on November 13th, and it was introduced in 1998 by the World Kindness Movement, a coalition of nations and kindness from non-governmental organizations. World Kindness Day is to highlight good deeds in the community, focusing on the positive power and the common thread of kindness which binds us. Kindness is a fundamental part of the human condition which bridges the divides of race, religion, politics, gender, and zip codes. So I thought what I would first ask you is to maybe explain for our listeners the C.S. Lewis quote that is in our summary: "Humanity is designed for peace, love, happiness, and goodness, but a big part of that design is God."
Yeah, that's an important thing to understand, is that the role of spirit in the human experience, peace, love, happiness, and goodness, is really dependent upon our relationship with spirit. God is what provides us with life. God is the creative principle for the universe, and it exudes peace, love, happiness, and goodness. Now, where things get kind of messed up is that when we don't have attention for this resource that is continuously pouring out all of this wonderful energy or life-sustaining forces for us, that's where the breakdown starts to happen. See, we break down when we're disconnected from this concept of God. In reality, you can't be disconnected from it, but you can think you're disconnected from it. And so the realms of mind play an important part in the cultivation of this relationship with divine law-seeking expression. That's where the Kriya Yoga comes in, where most of our techniques and practices are about, first of all, controlling our minds, and then training our minds to serve spirit, and then providing an evidence procedure with what does that look like when I'm actually doing it. Because the end result should be peace, love, happiness, and goodness. And so this whole thing of World Kindness Day, I think, is a great time for us to really do this inner inventory and to look and see if our inner environment is permeated with loving kindness.
Well, it's interesting about the concept of kindness, because I know sometimes we have talked about conduct and our relationship with the divinity. And if we are already filled with the divine, then we are humans in the adult state. Therefore, we would naturally be kind.
Yeah, see, that's the whole thing. The difference between conduct and a connection. And to be able to empathize is more of an indication and an understanding that comes with experience. It comes with this connection that we get. And one of the things that we said in the opening, that weakness makes us cruel. But weakness really comes from worldliness. Weakness comes from our relationship with the flesh versus the strength that comes from divine law seeking expression. So this whole thing of religion and relinking with a different resource and joining with this other source of sustenance provides us with an inner environment that has internal support, confidence. And the strength that comes with that also has wisdom. And our whole sense of self, our whole identity changes with the connection, so that these qualities that we want to demonstrate, these virtuous qualities that we want to demonstrate, become our nature, as opposed to something that we're trying to perform from a lower nature, whether it be one who is attached to the world or one who is attached to the realms of thought, that you're still at a different frequency, a different vibration. Now, you can be kind and be worldly, but it's not backed by divine law. Doesn't have the same power, doesn't have the same strength. And that's one of the distinctions that we really try and focus on with Kriya Yoga, that you really want to do things with technique. And when you have the benefit of internal support, when you have inner strength, then kindness is second nature.
Now, I'm looking at a quote here that I have gathered from my research, and this is a quote by Princess Diana. And it says here, carry out a random act of kindness with no expectation of reward, safe in the knowledge that one day someone might do the same for you. I thought that was an appropriate quote because sometimes I feel that if we do things, if we do certain actions or behaviors for conduct, that usually we're looking to get something out of it, something that we do. Whereas if you perform actions of kindness without any expectation of a return, that's a different way of being.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. The whole thing of unconditional giving. Now, that's only possible when you're attached to a resource of energy that is inexhaustible, totally reliable, unchanging. Otherwise, we're competing for energy on a limited level. We're competing for energy in the realms of matter or mind, which are dualistic. And so, just like we were saying, that it's not necessarily what we're doing, but the real variable here is my level of consciousness, my degree of awareness, and what it is that I ally myself with. What is it what is my source of sustenance? And like C.S. Lewis said, when we draw from this thing called God, then peace, love, happiness, and goodness comes with it.
I have another great quote here that I want to talk to you about too, get your thoughts on this. And this one is from the Dalai Lama. And he says, when we feel love and kindness towards others, it not only makes others feel loved and cared for, but it helps us also to develop inner happiness and peace. What is your take on that quote?
Well, I think the inner happiness and the peace comes from the knowing that you have divine love. And to me, that is what you really want to rest on. And from there, it's very easy to be loving and kind. When you have awareness of divine love encircling the universe, enveloping all of humanity, filling all space, and you let that permeate your consciousness, then for you to be able to love with Christ-like compassion is second nature. It's easy.
So you're saying for us to be kind, really, it has to be backed by love. Love really is going to be the driving force of everything that we do to develop this inner harmony and inner peace and happiness.
Right, and then to take it even further, God is love. God is principle. God is truth. God is spirit. These are just words that we throw out. But there is a force that's underlying human existence, universal existence. And to be in harmony with that is what these terms are referring us to. Now, if we identify lesser experiences and we assign it to the same terms, that's where things start to get confusing.
This is by Edith Wharton, and she says, there are two ways of spreading light: to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. And I had to really think about that, because we've been talking a lot about reflecting divine principle. So when I saw that quote, I thought it could be appropriate.
Yeah, and I think for me, that's really our only option, is to reflect divine law. That we can't create it. All we can do is be in harmony with it. We can reflect it. But we're not God. We are God's idea. We are God's reflection. We're made in the same image and likeness, but we don't have the same authority.
So I have a quote here from Vincent van Gogh that I liked a lot. And he says, there is nothing more truly artistic than to love people. So to me, that means that if you're naturally kind to people, then that means that you are demonstrating what love is. And then if you're kind to other people, then you're showing your ability to love someone else or other people.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And in doing so, we are reflecting divine law. That this concept of love comes from divine law. And it is part of our makeup. When we have awareness of it, and especially awareness of its origins, and then we're able to demonstrate it, I think, more consciously and more willfully, as opposed to trying to do it from the other way, it's kind of like an expression that you use a lot, to feel good because things are good is different than to feel good because you see the good in everything. And when you have a connection with divine love, then your inner environment just percolates with it. And that's where the physics kicks in, like attracts like. So when you have the euphoria of being in love in your inner environment, then it's very easier to see it in the outside world, because that's what you're drawn towards. That's what you're looking for. As opposed to if you have a lower vibration that is maybe more rooted in fear or jealousy or envy or anger, then that's what we seek out in the outside world.
Well, I think this is a good place to pause. And so, listeners, we're back with you in a few moments. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors. Kriya Yoga Theory 2 is a unique and revolutionary practice and forum designed to facilitate the growth process in human development. Apotheosis is a real experience and has an evidence procedure. You cannot lead someone to permanent change by doing for them what they must do themselves. Personal accountability and responsibility are the foundation of Kriya Yoga Theory 2. You must be engaged and devoted. Prana power brings virtue to overcome fear, wisdom to overcome ignorance, purpose to overcome selfishness, enthusiasm to overcome laziness. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. These sessions are a celestial positioning system to guide the individual into union with the divine. For more information or to sign up for your next session online, go to www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, in preparation for today's show, I did go on World Kindness Day website, and there's several out there. If you Google World Kindness Day, there are several websites that will give you a lot of information, and there's a few that will give you information on what type of things that you could actually do for World Kindness Day. And what's funny is there was one behavior that was listed was if you go onto a toll booth, pay for the toll for the car behind you. And I chuckled to myself because that actually did happen to me one time. I was going up to the toll booth and the toll attendant said, put your money away. The car in front of you already paid for you. And I was like, really? Well, why would they do that? And she was like, what happens? It happens all the time. People just do random acts of kindness. And at first, I drove off, and at first I was like, "Whoa, that is such an odd thing." And then, it really made me feel good that somebody just decided to do something nice for me today. And I tell you, it really put me in a good way that day. So then that made me to think that my reaction to that at first was a little bit, why would somebody do that? It's not interesting. I just didn't take it for face value that somebody just wanted to do something kind.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are guarded in that respect. And a lot of that has to do with the simple fact that we are more rooted in fear. And especially today, in today's world, with everything that's going on and stalking and all of the incorrect things and sexual harassment and all of that, you really have to be somewhat cautious initially. But again, most of this has to do with my level of consciousness, because if I'm totally established in my relationship with divine law, my world is completely enveloped in God's love, pouring out and filling all space. There is no room for this type of negativity. And so you can revel in the moment. But if you don't have this relationship with the divine and you're drawing from a limiting resource, and you do have the fear and you're more guarded, it has a tendency to the actual event, if that makes any sense.
It really does. And I think that's something that we should look at ourselves. If somebody is doing something nice for us, to just take it for what it is. Somebody just wants to do something nice, and maybe there isn't an ulterior motive. Like that movie Pay It Forward, where they kept doing that, kept doing acts of kindness to the next person. And if we all did that, what a wonderful world this would be.
Yeah, and again, if we had the benefit of internal support, if we had the light in our souls, and our whole sense of self was established in a relationship with divine law, then you're dealing with a population that is healthy, happy people. But that oftentimes isn't the case because the world is in what is referred to as a condition, that we're not typically operating from that perspective of seeing things with spiritual eyes or spiritual understanding, that we're still looking at things through material mind. And the material mind can only report back what is dualistic, temporary, and provisional, whereas spiritual sense can only report truth, which is always perfect, harmonious, whole, peaceful, and well. And so a big part of your yoga practice is about cleaning up our inner environment and eliminating a lot of the barriers to seeing just the beauty of holiness, the perfection of creation.
Now, I was going to ask you earlier, because when we talk about truth, we talk about truth with a capital T, and maybe our listeners don't really know what we mean by that, truth with a capital T. Can you explain that?
Truth really is reference to the whole concept of divine law, that underlying reality are principles. There are certain things that are tried and true, unchanging, and reliable, totally reliable. That's basically what truth is. Truth is like the gold behind currency. It's the backing that makes things valuable, authority, gives things power. And so when we talk about truth, and we're talking about truth in relation to the concept of love, that it can only be good. And so there's no room for error or evil in this model. That evil is the absence of love. It's the absence of truth. But it doesn't have a power in and of itself. There's really only one power in this model, and that comes from Spirit or God. And it is all good and perfect.
So we were talking before the radio show about the lower mind and the higher mind having to deal with the houses. Can you again explain that for our listeners, what we talked about earlier?
Yeah, the whole thing of the lower mind, which is your third house, which is the part of the mind that's related to sensual perception, which can be the stepping stone to the higher mind, which is the ninth house, the mind that reflects truth, that is in accordance with divine law, seeking expression. Now, when the lower mind is in accordance with truth, then there is peace, love, happiness, and goodness. But if the lower mind is in discord with truth, and it harbors limiting thoughts and beliefs, there can be a false condition would manifest itself possibly as sin, sickness, or disease, which prevents spiritual understanding.
Right, it makes sense. So if we can put ourselves in a situation where we want to be able to perform an act of kindness without any expectation of a reward, then we can assume that that act of kindness can beget another act of kindness, which can beget another act of kindness. And then that kind of brings me to this another quote that I have, and this is from Leo Buscagel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he says, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. And so I'm thinking that not just turn a life around, but actually that can really elevate our world consciousness.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the quote is from Leo Buscaglia, who wrote the book Love many years ago that you're talking about there. And yeah, I mean, that's what you really want to try and start to do, even say, for example, as part of your yoga practice, is to start to see the good in everything and start demonstrating that with this loving kindness, this attitude of loving kindness that comes from your practice. The simple fact that you have God's love, that you have a relationship with something that's pure, it's powerful, and it's sacred, and it produces this inner environment that is percolating with joy, then being kind, like I said, becomes your nature.
Now, when we practice our asana, we start every class with the salutations to the moon and salutations to the sun. And salutations to the sun, when we do the postures, there is a attribute that belongs with that particular posture. And the last one that we do is kindness. So it seems like all the other attributes kind of build up to kindness. Can you talk to our listeners about the salutations to the moon and salutations to the sun?
Yeah, when I talk about the salutations, I always think about the Dalai Lama once said that my religion is kindness. And for me, salutation to the moon are actually 12 movements that invoke the life force into each system that makes up the physical body. And so the term religion for me means to relink. So it's this whole joining of the individual with the divine. And by doing these particular movements, they have physiological, psychological, and then even deeper mystical benefits. But it kind of reminds me of reinforcing this religion, this rejoining of the individual with this force. And salutation to the sun is now your opportunity to demonstrate the qualities that are associated with this connection with this permanent, immortal source of sustenance. And like you said, it begins with bravery and then winds up as kindness as your final position. So again, my religion is kindness. And what we're doing is we're demonstrating that with a series of movements that have very specific goals and objectives with regard to your practice of yoga.
So if we can demonstrate those qualities, like say we talked about with salutations to the sun, and we can demonstrate kindness, ultimate kindness, then this is what we're talking about when we said in our summary of the show that is part of the magic of awakening in the likeness of the divine.
Absolutely. That whole thing of when all of a sudden you realize that you are in the image of divine law, that immediately sets the opportunity for us to master that idea. And it starts the whole process in a progressive cycle that leads to the experience of us becoming divine.
Well, I think it's about that time we're going to start closing down our program today. So listeners, be sure to visit our website, www.ipdtransform.com. And so once you're there, you can make comments and posts about this show or give us ideas for future shows. But you can definitely give us your comments and curiosities and questions because we'll enjoy hearing from you. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll be celebrating Thanksgiving. And also, don't forget, we also have every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Check us out on Facebook for our Facebook Live episode that we do. So, Swami, do you have any final thoughts or comments about today's program?
Well, I would like to remind everybody that the universe does love us, and having that connection with the life force, it should be easy for us to maintain an inner environment of loving kindness. And with that, I wish everybody a good day. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.